All right, so by now you should have an GUI application. It should be able to have interesting things on it, respond to button events, and then be able to grab data from the components you've added to it. Um, this is just about style now. We're not going to add anything functional. Because as I said, it's very confusing to remember. First name is equal to text box one. So what we can do instead is let's go back to our form designer and we come back to the properties, and we saw this is called text box one, but it didn't have to always be called text box one. When I come to the design here, I can change the name of text box one to be whatever I want it to be. I could call it first name, but in my estimation, first name is a thing about my application. I'm going to be receiving a person's first name and last name. So this isn't the actual first name itself, it's the first name input or the first name text box or something else you want to do. I like input because if I decide to change it from text box later on, the type of it, some programmers feel reflecting the type of an object is super important in the variable. That's a kind of an old school thing. It came often from databases, where in the database I want to know what the type of the field is. I don't feel that that's super important in object-oriented languages. You'll learn about this as we go because there's things like polymorphism inheritance that allows flexibility inside of what types are out there. So I'm going to name it first name input for now. And then I hit enter, and notice here has changed the code to reflect first name input. It's already done it for me. It's very nice that way. It helps me out. So I go back to my form here. I can click on the last name. I can change that one to be whatever I want it to be. But I'm going to follow the same pattern inside of here because when you establish patterns in your code, you make it easier for the reader to predict what's going to happen. Last name input. So if I want to know, hey, is something an input or not, I'm looking in Tony's code if it has the word input at the end of it. And again, I save my code. And I can come back over here and you can see now it says last name input. The last thing I'm going to do, just because I want to be super clean, if there's only one button in your application, it doesn't really matter. But let's say I'm going to have many buttons. I can have a save, an edit, a delete, a update, a whatever, many buttons that are going on. I can come through and change the button one to be the save button. Now, there is no reason why you couldn't have done this to start with. You could have built the button and immediately changed the name. That's in many ways preferable because then your button will always be the right name and you don't have to go through and fix it. But I didn't want to overload your brain with a whole bunch of things going on at the same time. I wanted to have a nice little conversation about these ideas. Now, one thing you can note here, I changed the name of the button. It still says button one click. Let me just double check that I did change the name of the button. Yep, it's now save button. That's one thing that it didn't update. So let's see if it still works or not. Let's go through and run it. Maybe something's broken inside of here. Nope, it still works just fine. Now it's a little confusing, and the point I'm wanted to make of this is there is a good reason to make these changes right away. This is not a fault in anything except for the tool didn't make this update. It clearly made the updates in the other two. It didn't make the update here. There's a good reason behind that because when I go through, I can look at the handlers and it already has it named as that handler, and it didn't. I can go through and change the name of that handler if I want to later on. But just from a style standpoint, it is important to get in the habit of naming things appropriately from the start. They become more challenging to fix later on. The idea of code style means less to you because you know what you did. You know why you did it, and you set the patterns in your mind of what you're working with right away as you build them. You do things that make sense to you. The reason for doing it is for the next person to read it, the next person to make it happen. I like to myself, if I have a bunch of assignments, I like to put the equal sign all in a line like I just did right there. I added a space right there. So we can see first name, last name, anything else that I'm going to go through all in one nice common line. It doesn't mean anything from a source code standpoint. But what it does, it says to the user, oh, look at all these things are grouped together. It's the reader, the other coder. It says all these things are grouped together. They're all things that I should somehow associate as being a common functionality, and maybe even they get used together as data items later on. Um, it's up to you on some of those style elements. I'm not going to be super picky on that. The code you write is for you. But the more you use code as a way of communicating to others and making it readable and expressible, give variables meaningful names, follow conventions and styles, the easier it is for other people to help you with your code. And the more professional you'll seem as a coder, the more hireable you'll be as a coder. So think about that as a last wraparound. It's not something that necessarily you have to do the first time through. It's not more important than getting the functionality working, but it's worth getting in habits of mind where you do that to start with, or at least you come back and fix it later on to practice being a professional coder to build these things in professional ways.